actor's home, which is like the old folks' home for actors in LA. And he was very instrumental in raising funds and you know, raising awareness and all that stuff, and visiting. He would go and visit people out there, and I think his sister was out there too. And he was just a great social, caring guy.
He also had one of the largest private collections of movies.
Yes,
in the world. In the world.
It was illegal.
Yeah, and he got in trouble for it. Not you know, it's not that it was something that was clandestine or illicit. He just had them, and there were certain copyright rules that were you know, operative at the time. So, did he have to divest himself of a lot of them or something?
I don't know. Anyway, but he would show them in his house. We'd have a movie night at his house with, you know, the projector and everything, and you know, there were all his friends in the movies. So.
And extraordinary dinner parties he would have with amazing people.
He had in his bathroom. I know I told this story if any of you were here last time, but in his bathroom he had Laurel and Hardy's bowlers. Their bowler caps were on the walls of the bathroom, and you know, sitting in front of the toilet going, oh my God. They would love this.
Yeah.
They would love that their hats are there.
Some amazing Hollywood memorabilia in the guest bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Question?
This question's for Chris. What brought you to Nightmare Before Christmas and Jack Skellington, and was it a good experience?
I auditioned. They were looking for somebody. They had already recorded and animated all of Danny Elfman's songs. And they were looking for an actor who had a voice that reasonably matched his voice. So it was really a serendipity. Pardon my punning on my name. I just went in, excuse me, and auditioned, and they cast me. And the experience was kind of weird. Not because the people involved were weird, but because this process is sort of weird. You go, they were shooting in a studio in San Francisco, an animation studio in San Francisco. So they would fly me up every 3 or 4 months for a day. Usually I'd fly back that evening. I'd be given the script for the scenes that they wanted to record on that day, you know, a few days ahead of time. And then I'd go into the studio with Henry Selick, the director, and record the scenes. Usually without any of the other actors. I think I did one recording session with Catherine O'Hara, who played Sally. And the rest of the time I was by myself in the studio with Henry, essentially saying, "No, Sally." Oh, okay, try it this way. "No, Sally." You know, it's sort of a very strange, you know, you're in a hermetically sealed kind of environment.
Isolated.
Very, very isolated. But the process itself is fascinating, and also I got a chance to watch what the animators were doing. You know, you walk into this cavernous building that they were using as a studio, and they had, I think, 4 or 5 sound stages set up. But we're not talking about sound stages, we're talking about sound stages. Little tiny rooms, literally, where they had these little people moving, and they were moving these little armature figures around. And as you walked into the studio, as I recall, in the hallway, they had the storyboards. And they were voluminous. I mean, the storyboards for the whole movie. So every shot was literally drawn out on a you know, in a sequence. And also, I thought, tellingly, because it's such a slow process, I think at the time, they were shooting something like 11 seconds a week. That is a usable film, because it's such a tedious process. I don't know if it's sped up any since then. There was something like over 400 different heads for Jack, for different expressions on Jack, and different transitional heads that would move from to, you know, I mean, they didn't use me as a model necessarily, but in order to do that, you got to have 10 or 12 different transitional figures into the smile. And each one of those has to be put on the armature figure, and then a frame or two of film is shot, then another head's put on. The hand is moved slightly if Jack is gesturing, and it goes for all the characters in all the scenes. So if you think about all those crowd scenes, for instance, in Halloween Town, how painstaking those were. I mean, it's an extraordinary artistic achievement in my mind, what they were able to do. And I worked with Henry almost all the way through for a period of about a year and a half of going up there every 3 or 4 months. And then at the end, when the movie was shot, was completely animated because they animate to the voices. Afterwards, then I spent 2 days in a studio with Tim Burton, just fine-tuning the performance, just going back and doing what's called ADR, that is just dubbing in different line readings and different approaches to scenes for Tim to have, Tim and Henry to have alternatives, and that was the way we got to the final process.
Thank you.
Hello. This is for both of you guys. What was it like to work with Amanda Pierce and Jonathan Stark?
Whoa. Boy, those two.
They're not here already.
Don't get me started.
Great. I mean, we were such an ensemble on that movie. You know, it really felt like it was just kind of a group of friends who were, you know, playing off each other and stuff. And it was great. Jonathan, his background is from improv comedy, and so he was awfully good at it. And Amanda's very funny as well. And so, yeah.
And it's interesting too because we have over the years gotten together a few times. Both in circumstances like this, and we actually, when I was living in Los Angeles and Amanda was still living there, we got together a few times just for the hell of it. And we just sort of pick up where we left off on the set. We've remained friends. When I go out to Los Angeles, I call Bill and we get together and have lunch. It was a really great experience. We had a terrific time.
It's really lasted, which is really nice. Very nice.
This question is for Chris. Chris, what was it like to work on The Resurrected? And I've also read that the original cut of the film is significantly longer and much better than was released in the theaters.
I'll answer the second part first. I have no idea what it was like originally. So I have no idea, you know, how it differs from the final product. I think I've only seen it once since it came out. It became a kind of obscure cult movie, if that's not an oxymoron. You know,
Not your mainstream cult.
Right, a mainstream cult movie like Fright. And the experience on the movie itself was kind of odd as well because Dan O'Bannon, who directed it, and was a very well-known, again, a really well-known screenwriter, who wrote Alien and what else did Dan write? Does anybody here? Dan O'Bannon.
Return of the Living Dead.
What?
Return of the
Living Dead. Dark Star. So, you know, a real sort of genre genius. That's what you say in the French language. What am I talking about? Anyway, Dan was not well at the time. And so he was sort of in and out in terms of his focus on the picture. Lovely man, but he just had a hard time. He was having problems with an illness. So it was and also the subject matter is so weird. Pardon me for saying this in a genre audience crowd, but it's not easy to do that stuff and make it believable. So it was a fine. The experience was fine, but it was a little on the strange side. Hi.
It's for both of you, kind of. Why was the teenager in the 85 when Fright came out? And I thought,
85? You're kidding.
Teenager.
No, I mean, that's how long ago the movie is.
87, right?
Last century.
You both look great. I followed True Blood, Vampire. My question will come after I tell you that you are the hottest vampire that I know. I don't get the whole Twilight thing, but that's my question. What do you think, even now, like, there's such an obsession with vampires? What's up with that? Like, do you guys, what do you think it is? That's all, really. For both of you.
Well, technically, I'm a vampire killer. So, I don't know. I mean, longevity, youth, sex, everything that America's about. Power, seduction.
Yeah. It's also interesting to me that there has been a more recent transition into a more romanticized version of the vampire with the Twilight movies and True Blood. And it's interesting because I participated in some of the conversations. I went to Comic-Con for the new Fright night. And
What's the new Fright?
well, there's another Fright night. And one of the conversations that we were having was about the fact that, and I think they succeeded. Tom's original vision of this movie was much more tied to the lineage of the original vampire movies, which was Nosferatu, with the Dracula movies, the Bela Lugosi movies, the Carl Dreyer vampire, of the vampire as this ruthless predator. Now, Jerry was conceived probably in a little more sort of European version of that. But basically, he was still, he wasn't from Europe, but he was a suave, debonair. But he was still a ruthless killer. And while there were intimations of there being some kind of a relationship with Amy, that basically it was about turning Amy into one of, what he was. And it wasn't about a romantic, necessarily, fixation with her, but just because he wanted her blood. So, and the new Fright Night, I think, has succeeded in returning to that way of looking at the genre as this character is a ruthless predator. Very powerful one, physically, can transform himself in any number of ways. I'm not sure what's behind the romanticization of the vampire story, except that it's occurred, and it appeals to a younger demographic too, to young teenage girls primarily.
I think the thing about vampires is they're the only sort of monster that you don't know they're a monster until it's too late. It's not like Frankenstein or a zombie or something like that, where you know what you're getting into. And there's probably for us as a culture, a sense of anybody can turn into something else at any time. We all have those hidden personalities and motives within us, and that's probably what makes it so endearing.
And it's kind of interesting you would say that, because on a sort of cultural level, when you think about what Bill just said in terms of that this is a creature that you don't know is an alien until it turns into the vampire. In a way, culturally, each era has its own version of the vampire in the culture. That is, a spy, a terrorist. And so it sort of speaks to that in a way as well. That sort of hidden creature that we don't know lives among us. And then it reveals itself in some way, shape, or form, either by committing an act of terror or bloodletting, as it were.